I mean, if there is such a thing as a God that is out of time, like that is eternal, why can't other concepts like good just be out of time and eternal, just a thing that exists like God?
Okay. Sir, good is an intangible value. You cannot see good.
You can't see God either.
Exactly. You cannot measure good, right?
You can't measure God. It could exist eternally, just like it could just be God. It could just be God. It could not be just God. It could just be the existence of good and evil that just exists in the world. But given a tri-omni God who's all-powerful and all-caring, why evil and suffering exists doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, good. You hang with me and we'll go.
He's as powerful and caring as he says.
In order to understand goodness, there has to be a mind. This tree has no understanding of good. This cement has no understanding of good. See, good can't just exist. Because goodness requires definition. And it's an intangible value that you can't measure. You can't grab goodness. Which means you got to have a mind involved in defining what is good.
If we're going by that definition, then what is defining God?
Okay,
what created God?
We'll get to that.
All the arguments you could give for God could also go for good, just as a general concept.
It was at this moment that this pastor realized that he fucked up. Because it is at this moment that he realized that his argument was actually lost, but he's going to try to recover. But if you contemplate what the other gentleman, who is more than likely agnostic, argument is, why couldn't good be just eternal in the same way that God is? And it can be defined that way and without having to have a God, which would then explain why there is evil, because evil would be eternal. True, good and evil are things that are concepts of the mind, and based on your culture, based on your upbringing, you will have different concepts than what I may have. So it's subjective. But to say that in order to justify God, there must be a mind. I mean, in order to justify good, there must be a mind to justify it. Therefore, trees and grass and things of that nature cannot create good. But there has to be a mind in order to create God, in order to define God, in order to say what God is. This is one of the reasons why throughout the history, the known history of man, we have had different gods at different times that led different people to have different moral compasses and different cultures. It is because man in his mind has defined what God is and what God is not. And because of man's definition of God, which the Bible God fits that category just as much as any other God, man has decided who God is and who God is not based on the culture of a small group of people in the Levant who just so happened to have caught the attention of the leading power of the world, the Roman government. That is the only reason your mind describes God in such a way that the Christian Bible God is God. When the Arab nation took over and they made Islam their religion, this is why the people in that area believe God is the definition of what they have decided God is. The young man is absolutely correct. Whatever people decide is God is what God is. And if people decide that it is just good and evil, two things that exist on a pole, the same pole, just at different vibrations and different frequencies. Let's continue with this debate.
In a general concept. It could just exist eternally out of time, unmeasurable.
No, sir. That's not fair. If God exists, God doesn't depend on anybody. If goodness as an intangible value exists, it depends on a mind to define it.
So how is that unfair? Why is it unfair that he utilized the same definition you have of good and the dependence of good to be something that depends on the mind, and the fact that you believing in a God depends on a mind as well? You can no more prove God of the Bible than you can prove God of any book, because this God's proof is based on that particular book and those people's beliefs. But you see how he claimed that it's unfair for him to be able to do that, to utilize his own argument against himself, because he is dedicated to swerving these people no matter which way it goes.
God could also be an intangible.
Obviously, that's right.
It's like coming from a different viewpoint outside of trying to see where, the reasoning for things. You could say that it could be what we define as God, societally, could just be the existence of just that good in the same context of eternal and timeless and all of that. Like,
if there is no God, goodness is not eternal, because goodness demands a mind to define it. Which means,
then in giving that same argument, then what mind defines God? There would be something above him if something has to make him or define him.
No, God can be an eternal being without beginning, without end.
I don't think you see my point, because goodness could be the same thing.
You're not listening, sir.
You're giving goodness a different definition.
No, sir, you're not listening to me, and I don't appreciate it. I told you flat out, and I think you're smart enough to get this point. Goodness demands some mind to define it. The tree, the cement, has no ability to understand goodness. You've got to have a mind. Do you see that, or do you disagree with me?
I think we're coming to different definitions of good, because then, there's still, outside of that though, given your definition of good, still, why is evil or suffering?
Forget my definition of good. Your definition of good.
I'm just saying, given yours, why does evil and suffering exist?
All right, all right,
You're
fine.
evading that part of the
move on to
question.
that, okay? But sir, I got a real problem with your thinking, all right? I don't think you're being honest with yourself.
I think the problem is he knows that he's losing this debate, and he hasn't swerved this man enough that he gives up. Now, there is one point that I would have made differently than the young man, and that is the fact when he said there has to be a mind above God that would then be able to define God. I understand in the thought process that since our finite minds cannot truly and fully know and define God, because God would be undefinable, the all would be undefinable. The created cannot fully define or know the creator. I can understand that thought process. But what we know in reality when it comes to these religions is that man has defined what God is. You see, it was man who defined God as eternal. God didn't come down and say that he was eternal. God didn't come down and write a book and describe himself and say that this is what I am. These are all things that man wrote, that man decided, that man created. This is why you don't even have the Israelite or Hebrew people mentioned or talked about or even in existence until around 1200 BCE. Prior to that, there's no mentioning of this God in the format that the Israelites called him. Prior to that, he was mentioned as Yahweh, a Canaanite God, who was the son of El, whose brother was Baal, whose mother was Asherah. It was later that they was brought into one being as Yahweh became El, and then Asherah became his wife until Josiah, when Josiah got rid of her as being his wife. But back to the point. The tree, the grass, the concrete cannot define good. A gorilla can. A lion can. We've seen that animals can show tendencies of goodness. But he has lost this battle, and now he wants to insult this man's intelligence. Because man does define good and evil based on his culture, but man also has defined God based on his culture as well.
That's not fair. You know very well that I've cornered you totally, intellectually.
Actually, you didn't. He actually cornered you totally and intellectually. But the fact that you're using the authority of your platform to be able to make statements that you did something that you did not do just shows that when you lose, your ego can't handle it and realize that you were defeated. But y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.